I don't know. It's like I'm getting more like comfortable, and I'm just become the bad guy. Anyways,
I
we
mean,
are joined. Whoa, go on.
no, you're good. You're good. It was dumb. It
Okay,
was
let's go.
quips.
Let's get
Yeah,
started.
let's do it.
So we're joined live this hour by Scott Creeley, Scott Noon Creeley. He is an author, a poet, a professor, Ralph Fiennes impersonator. And we're really glad to have you this hour. Scott, before we get started in talking about all your publications and various, like awards and travels and things that you've accomplished, can you tell us a little bit about how you got started as a poet? What got you into? Yeah, tell us about tell us first about your educational journey, like how you how it all got here.
Yeah, so just in terms of college, I went to Mount San Antonio College, and I'd probably credit that with the community college system with being one of the things that got me the most into writing, and maybe making me take my academics a little more seriously too. Not that I didn't in high school, but I really got encouraged by going to the community college system. I ran into a professor who still teaches there named John Branningham, who I now do events with and stuff pretty regularly, have for 8 or 9 years, and another creative writing professor named Cynthia Prohaska. And they had these great sort of writing workshops that were like wide open, really accepting, trained you towards what you wanted to write instead of what they wanted you to write. And I went there for a few years, 3, because community college you never really get out into. And then I went to UC Riverside, did a creative writing program there, ran into a bunch of great professors, and then went to Cal State Long Beach and studied mostly with Charles Harper Webb and Bill Moore, who both are still pretty active doing stuff. So those are basically all the school stuff, and all good programs. But I'd credit the community college system with getting me started on it the most in terms of education, anyway.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about working with John Branningham? Like, what was he like as a professor?
Oh, so John is particularly good at one, creating like a safe environment, and an environment that's geared towards anybody that walks through the door. Like they'll find an environment that encourages them to speak. That lets them know that their opinion, regardless of their background, is valued, and that he wants them to really amplify whatever unique thing it is that they have to say. And just basically the safety of his classroom, encourages young writers. And he did a lot of bringing in sort of people who were already professionals and had them kind of talk up how they had gotten into poetry or fiction and their paths to publication and how their career had gone and all that stuff, is extremely encouraging when you're just starting writing. And the other thing that he did that I now try to emulate when I'm teaching is he really encourages students to send out their work for publication, which, isn't always something that newer writers get encouraged to do. So all those things are pretty awesome. You interviewed him in the past already, right?
Was that?
Yeah, nice. Is my audio's all right?
Yeah, your audio's good.
All right, sweet. Yeah. So he was one of the particularly great ones. We got do I have any science fiction poems? Oh yeah. Do we ignore the questions for now? Do we keep going?
This is my show, so we do the questions.
All right.
When I say we do the questions.
I got distracted by the chat. Little ADD-ish.
I will take note of the chat, and I will make sure that if we don't have an interesting conversation, those questions will get asked. But otherwise, it may or may not get asked. Yeah.
All right.
Even though I tell people ask Scott questions, I mean, like this, you can ask Scott questions. You can answer them later. You know what I mean? I can tell you when they're going to be answered. No, we'll get to the science fiction poems. So tell us a little bit about some of the work though you do with John with the San Gabriel Lit Festival.
Yeah, so that's a what was a nonprofit that we started up. I mean, it still is a nonprofit. It was a 501c3, but it is an arts collective and monthly and annual set of readings that are meant to showcase writers from around the state of California. And then once a year, we try to bring in writers from all over and have a festival that that is either a 1 or 2 day affair that has readings all day. Writers can come and sell their books. It usually has like an open mic component, so people can read with the invited writers and get to rub elbows with people that publish a lot of stuff, like won awards. It's very much a community thing, and John has been running monthly readings for like I would say like 15 years, and I've been helping him run them for like a decade. And they're meant to be, extremely open, extremely accessible. We've had them in various venues. We used to have them with the city of West Covina in their library, and the first big festival was in their city hall. And then we ended up having them at the Daw Center for the Arts for a while. We'll probably still periodically have some readings there. And then now they're going to be at the California Imagism Gallery in Ontario, which John runs with his wife Anne Brandy. So it's all about accessibility. It's all about exposing people to both famous people and people they otherwise might not see. And it's also about giving newer writers a shot at like meeting people that'll help get their first publications and stuff. It's very, very writing intensive and community oriented. And we've been at it for a while. I think we did the 7th big festival, and we've been working on it all together like for 9 years. I really enjoy doing it. All this recently has kind of brought it to a screeching halt, but we'll see how much longer this goes and see if we need to take it to a new like digital format or something like that. So, that's kind of the whole run of that. You've read at it a number of years, which always appreciated.
You talking about like Culturama, Writers Weekend that became Culturama?
Oh no, that's a whole other thing that John does. I'm talking about just the writing festival. But I mean,
the big one. Yeah. I don't know what shit is. I just show up and I'm like, hey.
Yeah. No, you book like 9,000 events a year. It's hard to keep straight, and some of them are run by the same people. Like
exactly.
Tough to hold up. Yeah.
It's like Branningham shit. They show up and I'm like, hey, what's up? No.
Like 3.
I So can you talk about your involvement in Writers Weekend as well as Culturama?
Yeah, Writers Weekend. I'm not really an organizer. I tend to be a teacher. I teach poetry workshops and science fiction writing workshops, which are also what I teach over at Whittier College.
Do you have any science fiction poems?
I do have some science fiction poems, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to just scrape them together at the drop of a hat. But
don't worry about that.
Quite a few. Yeah. But I might be able to come up with one later if I get a second. I like science fiction because it's all about empathy and possibility and human potential, and all those things are extremely important for humanity. They're the reasons that we do live. And sci-fi, when you do it right, really allows you to tap into that stuff. And so every year at Writers Weekend, I do at least 2 of those. I've worked in the past as doing creative futurism for companies like Fox and HBO, and helping them try to determine where their products are going to go in the future. I don't do any stuff like that anymore, thank God, because it's a corporate nightmare. But I also teach sci-fi lit classes at Whittier. It's futurism and the future, because of all those all that potential and all that those ideas of empathy and possibility are extremely important to me. I like to study them, like to think about them.
Yeah, I want to talk more about your obviously your teaching and the workshops you lead at these various events. But what you just said is news to me. You used to work as a consultant with HBO.
Well, I worked for a company that has done some stuff for various companies. The one I was most involved in was for Fox Television, which was looking at the future of where TV would be in 10 or 15 years. And unfortunately, the answer is that, for them, is that it probably won't exist in the form that they wanted it to. But it was really like, so creative futurism is when you create like short stories or screenplays or scripts for like these companies. This is a real broad umbrella, but for these companies that try to predict for them, like give them like motivation to work on like future things, give them possibilities where their products are going to go, like give them ideas. It's a real enslavement of sort of the creative process towards like their products. So it's something I did like right after college that I probably would not do again. even if I had the chance.
You were like Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park or something. Like you're coming in like here's my theory, like putting like water drops on their hand and shit.
Yeah, they just snag a bunch of sort of like starving college students and a few older writers, and they're like, hey, you guys have MFAs, you got a few publications, like tell us what this is going to be like. It's interesting stuff, but like given that it's corporations, they really constrain your creativity, and they don't want any radical ideas. They just want something they can basically stick into a PowerPoint or email around and get some kudos for, but it's an interesting process for what it is. It sounds better than it is.
It sounds like a soul crushing process, and I'm sure that
yeah.
Remember, but it's interesting. So, it's different. It's not something. I haven't had an opportunity to talk to somebody who got to tell thoughts like, hey,
nothing ever gets finished. Nothing in those environments. Nothing ever gets finished. Like they pay for like people to write it up, to like give them a script or a screenplay or whatever. Like they'll mail it around, they'll give you some notes, they'll produce it, and then they just never do anything with it, like perpetually. Or if they do, it's hidden in some deep corner of some website. And that's
so when was this? Like what time period? Like 2001?
Probably like 2007 or 9 or something like that.
All right, so in 2007, you're like, in the future, Joe Rogan will crush you. Like on YouTube.
Yeah. I mean, that would be just accurate. Like Joe Rogan is reaching political ascendancy, so this is a nightmare world we live in. It's just a fact.
It is.
Yeah.
But did you see that coming?
Say it again.
Did you see that? I mean, because you're telling them the television is not going to be what they want it to be in like 10, 15 years, right? Well, here we are 10, 15 years later, and television is obviously losing to like podcasts and this and that and the other. So, like, did you see that coming?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, hardcore. Like, I could say it's the one like super good prediction I ever made. But obviously not the only one. I think a lot of people were reading the writing on the wall on that, right around that period. But obviously not anything they wanted to hear. They also didn't want any like VR components to it or anything in our little fictitious vignettes that we were writing for them. They're like they can't interact with it. They can't it can't be answering them and stuff. That's video games. It's not TV. So just wildly unimaginative bullshit.
So they didn't see the rise of video games either.
I mean, they. I don't think they saw that all media was sort of going to converge into this mono media the way it kind of is in some capacities. Like, I don't think they saw sort of like the collapsing of streams. Because I mean, we're doing television right now, we're doing video games, we're doing radio. Like, it's all rolled into one right here in just this little conference we're doing, right?
People are calling what I do a fucking podcast. I have no idea what I'm fucking doing. Podcast.
Yeah, exactly. So it's all kind of conglomerating into one stream. And I think they fight against that because they monetize each individual separate stream, right? And every time one of those streams closes out, it's a loss of revenue, so they're resistant to that. I mean, it's it gives the people that hold the means to spreading that stuff a lot more control, but on the other hand, they lose revenue on it. So I don't know.
Yeah, that answers the question. Did you specifically see the rise of Joe Rogan, though? That I want to know, Scott.
No. If only I would have trained in jiu-jitsu. I don't know. Been better prepared to fight him. It's but it's over now. He's got all the jiu-jitsu. Like he's got all the supplements.
You see those kicks? Like, he can throw kicks.
Yeah. He swung from Bernie to Trump. He's like wildly unpredictable. Like we're not going to stop him now. It's already over.
No, and have you seen his kick? He was showing like fighters how to throw kicks. Like he can.
No, yeah. He was a pro fighter, so it makes sense. But he's the MMA guy.
Yeah, he's unstoppable.
I think you could take him, Matt. You've got the spirit. Well,
Yeah, wow. But neither my podcast nor my kicks. Well, I don't know. I got some work to do. Wow. Okay. So you have a number of publications. Before we get into that, I want to ask you about what was it like? Because one of the things you got the chance to do was through with I don't remember the name of the other poet that you got to go with, but you and a couple poets went in a delegation to China.
Oh yeah. I went with Gregory Pardlow and Tony Barnstone.
Barnstone.
There were two others, and they were East Coast poets, and I don't remember their names, but they're way more well published than me. So, just and Michelle Chahara, who's this other writer out of Whittier College. And so, I went to I went with them to a read at an eco poetry festival in China in Beijing and the Yunnan province and Beijing Normal, the Lucian Academy of Writing and Fine Arts, and Yunnan University in Kunming. I always get the province and the college confused, and that was a really cool experience. It's some of the more like directly activist kind of oriented writing that I've gotten to, because it's this festival that's all about exposing both Chinese and both Chinese and American writers who write about ecology and our relationship to ecology, and exposing them to each other and getting them to collaborate and work together and translate each other's work and get a chance to present to students. And some of them came over to the U.S. after that, did a tour of U.S. colleges and events and got to speak. Went to like Santa Monica and Whittier and UCLA. It's a really great project because ecological writing, like until recently, hasn't gotten like a ton of attention, and it also obviously is something we need really badly, and especially both China and the U.S., the world's biggest polluters. Like there's a lot of resistance to talking about those topics.
So that's kind of interesting to me. Like you're going to China and you're speaking there about environment, and obviously China, along with the United States, are the world's two largest polluters, right? Mm-hmm. And at the same time, you have this situation where the United States has forever had a very aggressive, warlike position against, the Chinese in general, the Chinese government. They want overthrow and want a full restoration of capitalism, And so, like, that's kind of an awkward position to be in. I mean, like, you're there because you're critiquing industry, but you come as an American. I mean, how'd you balance all that out?
Well, mostly kept my critiques to my side of the fence, like first off, and also I think that fundamentally, even considering that relationship, like you say, it's a really warlike stature, and the U.S. is, directly and indirectly done its best to export industry and the byproducts of industry, especially like pollution, to foreign countries, but especially China. And now we're on a footing where we're doing it to a lot of it to the Philippines and Mexico, like where we export the industry, we get things cheaply produced, and then they keep the obviously the waste and the byproducts and the pollution from that industrial process. So a lot of that was the way in which we sort of discuss the relationship. And obviously you have your hyper capitalist in China, and you have like graft and things like that keep those systems in place there too. But it's all at the end of the day like a result of, a lot of it is a result of, most of it is a result of U.S. foreign policy, over the past like century, right? Like back to the era where China's getting called the weak man of Asia. Like you start having people like doing their best to export the difficulties of labor and production and export the pollution and the results of that industry. So. That's the way that I mostly discussed it. And two, I sort of took it to like an individual, and like, so rather than discussing like broad government policy, I discuss kind of the consumer aspects of both of our cultures, and about how much our ability to insulate ourselves from the consequences of the things we consume is very strong in both of our countries. We're able to live in a bubble of false reality where we don't, maybe until recently, like have to face up to any of the consequences of like of the kind of existence that we lead. Like and the inherent hypocrisy you feel even addressing that is something that's important to discuss too. But ultimately, those are the tacks that I mostly take on it, because it's very interconnected. And a lot of people, I think, view China as just like, oh, they're terrible polluters, or they were terrible polluters because they've already started refusing a lot of the industrial waste and recycling and electronic recycling and those kinds of things. But I think a lot of people view that in a really simplistic fashion, and obviously, as you know, they shouldn't. Like, it's very interconnected and very imperialism driven.
Yeah.
And we have it on our doorstep in places like Mexicali, like where on one side of the border you have a massive amount of pollution going on, and then in Calexico, which is just on the other side of the fence, you have like the air quality is only 2/3 as bad because like they've taken all these American companies and dodge taxes and get cheap labor right across the border, and then have to keep the byproducts and the pollution. So that's how I approached it. With sort of mindfulness of the fact that it's kind of a almost a hypocritical action, and it's I'm not there to lecture, just there to talk. Obviously, can't come at
Yeah.
anything like that from a position of authority.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm gonna ask you a couple. I want to get to your writing, your career as a writer. Before we do that, I want to ask you a couple of, since we're kind of shifting right now into some political territory. I'll ask a couple of political questions. Why is it that the Chinese are able to build, the Chinese government or Chinese infrastructure is able to build a hospital in 10 days, and yet in the United States of America, the president is encouraging people to drink bleach?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I think you'll agree with this. That, like, when everything becomes capitalistic and becomes about profit, like you have everybody working to extract their share from any action that's undertaken, right? Like nothing is any longer about collective well-being or like a collective goal. Like once the profit motive is insinuated itself in every part of your society, it's about who's the subcontractor that lays down the wiring, who gets paid the money to grade it, who pours the cement, how much overtime do they have to pay, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like that, despite common belief that capitalism of things can make things wildly inefficient. Profit motive once it becomes an oligopoly like we have going on, where people um, where people have advocated themselves into a position where they can dictate government policy, via money. They stand to profit from everything the government does because they've lobbied themselves into that position. And so I would say that we can't get a hospital built in how fast did they do it there again? What was the 10 days? Yeah, we can't get a hospital built in 10 days because you can't profit on a hospital being built in 10 days. And so therefore we do not do it. But then we do have people that, profit from the president saying things like drink bleach. But ultimately, the president's able to distract people by saying things like drink bleach because that's insinuated itself so far in our society. And the wildly frustrating thing is that most people believe that capitalism is more responsive because you have things like supply and demand, but that only goes so far, and it will inevitably work itself into your government and make you into an oligarchy. There's no capitalism without oligarchies eventually. Like, and will slow things down and make things inefficient. So I don't know. Your thoughts? Anything to add to that?
My thoughts?
Yeah.
Why is China able to do? Because China has a planned economy, and the United States is organized
Yeah,
by the
it's
chaos of the
ultimately where it
market.
is. Yeah, yeah, it's factious factions, right? Like with a profit motive, and at the end of the day,
there's definitely people within China that are able to become billionaires. So obviously, clearly, there's some mode of private property, and there's some that obviously exists, right? But at the end of the day, the commanding heights of the economy are still kind of in the hands of central planners. And so when you can centrally plan something, you can make it happen. You know what I mean? It's like, you know what I'm saying? You can make it happen. You have a guiding voice, and when you have a guiding voice, things can get done. Here's another question though. Why is it that in the middle of a health pandemic, a global health pandemic, Cuba is able to send doctors around the world, whereas in the United States of America, Jeff Bezos is having GoFundMe for his workers?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of forces at work there. I mean, again, like planned economy first off, right? There is also Cuba has essentially like had its own bubble to have this highly efficient, from what I understand, medical university system that has had research has had research that isn't necessarily funded by profit motive, right? It's funded by like need and common goals, and so I think consequently, they have these unique branches of research and these highly trained doctors that are able to, respond not necessarily with a profit motive to anything that goes on within their own country. And they, likely, one, they're also a small island that's able to isolate just from like a practical perspective. But two, able to react quickly, be super nimble, and then using that really amazing medicine system that they built up on their own, then export that to the world because they're not staying there to make profit. They're able to then go out into the world and sort of help, as Cuba often does, especially in recent events, and not getting turned away as much as they used to either, because that sort of diplomatic block is breaking down, which is nice. I mean, as far as Bezos, it's Jeff Bezos. He's becoming like the supervillain controller of the world via like the massive unimaginable wealth, and so that's done by eking out any possible penny that he can. He's accumulated, I've seen a visual representation of it via like a infographic, and you have to scroll for like 45 pages, even when compared to other people like Beyonce or Jay-Z. Between he and some of the other richest people in the world, it's fundamentally absurd, and you get that kind of wealth by extracting every little bit of human cost that you can, because that's where that kind of massive wealth comes from. So that's my take on it, at any rate. Not a doctor, not an economist, but certainly my opinion on it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Why did Elon Musk launch a car into space? He's a hard-hitting question.
Spectacle. He's a maniac. He's because he thinks he's Tesla, but he's more of a dunce-ish Edison. Why did Nero mint money for his donkey? Like at a certain point you can just do anything. Because he's pretended that 55,000 or so like engineering employees are his own cleverness, and he's taken away the things that they produced, and it's made him a madman. I mean,
there you go. Good answer. All right. So getting back to your work, sir. You you have a collection of poetry, published by
Spout Hill Press.
Digging a Hole to the Moon, published by Spout Hill Press. Can you tell us a little bit about? Actually, you know what? Can you share with us a poem?
Yeah. Let's. Let me read. That's a cat. All right, let's do this one. 2 cups of tea poured into the grass. Out in the garage, under a dirty light bulb, I read that the part of the brain that holds the capacity for faith has only the volume of a popcorn kernel. This seed lights up for meditation, for sweaty prayer, or for the low, uneven gurgle of a woman who speaks in tongues and retains nothing of her ecstatic prayer. This idea makes sense to me, because yesterday, my father, an undertaker, called and told me how he'd guided 2 little girls to their parents' grave, where they laid out a blanket and 4 cups of tea, 2 of which they eventually poured across the dead grass just below his headstone. With my eyes closed, with the phone humming against the side of my face, I think I feel that knot of cells flaring to life in the salty nebula of my gray matter. Like a searchlight piercing the water to find a destroyed car with 2 parents, but no little girls. Maybe this clump of cells is like a signal flare, clawing at the sky in bursts of yellow and red before falling back to earth and hissing out. But possibly this knot is nothing more than an exposed light bulb hanging in a garage, collecting dirt and the cooked skeletons of moths into the wire inside snaps, broken beneath the strain of constant illumination. Poem.
13. That's incredible. Wow. A certain word or thought remembered will stir within someday.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know the rest of the song. Damn. You know the song, Phil?
No. I just remember,
okay.
I remember a part of it. I remember a part of it.
A certain word or thought. Something about the Spartan way, right? Maybe.
We'll stir within someday. We'll call the nights of victory. Time is washed away.
You're right. Okay, damn. Okay, you're absolutely right.
The battle's over. We're proud. We're Spartan men. That was the worst shit imaginable. That was terrible.
We went to a Catholic school together. For anybody in the audience that doesn't know.
Yeah.
There was some of that in the poem. There was some atheism in there. You might have picked up on.
There was a. You've actually made your way into one of my poems. I mean, I don't know if you're aware. I mean, I think you're aware.
Oh yeah, man. Absolutely, it's the first poem in your book.
Yeah.
Yeah. I dug that.
I've never actually been one of my big things is that I'm like very driven by like vengeance, right? Like I'm very, very driven by vengeance, and I can't track this guy. He's still alive. Travis lives.
Yeah, I thought he had died, but he is still alive. Yeah, he was exiled from the school, from what I understand.
Yeah. So I can't find him. So and that's quarantine now. So whatever. And so like and I would hate for him to pass away without me like
yeah. I would just like him to know that you have the career that you have and have gone the places you've gone. It would be interesting. Yeah.
So I know I'm not going to watch this, but I can publicly shame him anyways. I mean, anyone watching now, and this is actually this is destined for somewhere else. So the University of Cambridge, somewhere I've spoken. Yeah. Fuck you, Father Travers, you fucking dick. Piece of shit. Racist. Anyway.
Should we recap the whole scenario is Matt and I were minding our own business, right? We were in the office for some reason, but not in trouble, just like doing something, running an errand or something. And this priest comes up to me and he's like,
Monsignor.
What? Say it again?
Monsignor or whatever the hell he was.
Yeah. He was the head priest of the school. And he comes up and he turns to me and like apropos of nothing, touches my shoulder, touches Matt's, and he says, Scott, I judge you by the company that you keep. You're a good guy, but I judge you by the company you keep. And like I was like 14 or something, but I was still just like kind of floored. I was like, I thought he was joking. I was like, what the hell is this guy? He was not joking though. He was dead serious. He was warning me not to hang out with Matt. And Matt did make me into an atheist eventually. Probably helped me along this poetry road. So maybe he was right at the end of the day.
I mean, I don't know. Like
it was bizarre, man. It was really fucking bizarre.
Yeah. I'm a year older than you now. I mean, I guess that meant something back then. Doesn't really mean much now, but like, I mean, but yeah, no, man, like that was a pretty that was one of the kind of formative experiences of my life.
It was
being told
weird.
by the principal of the school, the head priest, or whatever. And he says, I judge you by the company you keep, and you spend your time with this.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It was, yeah. And really just a bizarre move for a guy that's running a school supposed to nurture young minds, and nothing solicited it, man. It was purely out of nowhere from what I remember. The guy just sort of materialized to tell me not to hang out with you. It was a bizarre move. And like, it's not like you even got in much trouble or anything, man. I guess he didn't like your fashion sense. It's really bizarre.
But no, he was a racist. But
yeah, I think so too. I was gonna let you say it first.
Yeah. But also like, I mean, I got in a little bit of trouble, but so did you. I mean, like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, definitely not less than you. Like, maybe more. It's like, yeah. So.
Yeah, I didn't bring that. I'm not the one that brought the night to school, man. That was a guy named Callagher.
Yes, I forgot about that. That was really weird. Yeah, a lot of those memories did not come off as intense at the time as they should have. Like I now only now look back on that, I'm like, wow, that was deeply fucked up. All the things that happened.
It feels like a prison. That was horrible.
Were you in the class where the wrestling coach chased the kid out in the middle of class, like kind of like intimidated him to the floor, and then the kid crawled out of the room as the coach was chasing him, or was that Andrew's video?
I think we were all. He threw out Francisco.
Okay, all right, I thought so. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
this is the kind of school it was, audience. Like it was wild. It was a little jail-like. Yeah. It's why I'm a poet. I got really depressed there. I ended up transferring to public school towards the end of going at the end of my junior year. I was just like, "Fuck this! I'm out. I can't take it anymore." Like too effeminate of a boy for this rough environment. And
you were talking about that. You were pretty rough. I mean, like I mean, you had to be, right? You had to be.
Yeah. There's definitely an element there. Yeah.
You had to be. But then then I ran into you like years later at the CK Cafe.
Yeah. Like maybe like a 5 or more, maybe longer than that. But
You were, like, what, racing motorcycles or something, or what? You were like?
Oh Jesus! Yeah, I was. This is the era of the Fast and the Furious. So I had taken my Eagle Talent, this knockoff Mitsubishi Eclipse type car, and I had started modifying it, and I was taking it to the street races in Ontario, and so were a lot of people. There would be like, I got some poems about it in my book actually, because I was doing it for a while. But we would just take our shitty like cars with exhaust and modify them up, and then we were racing them, at 2 or 3 in the morning in Ontario. They started closing all the streets around there because of it. I did that for a few years until I realized that I didn't have the money for it, and it was crazy.
Right. I mean, so that's from my perspective. Like, I know you when you're like maybe 15 to 17, maybe around that age, and then I see you again like early 20s, and now you're like racing cars. You're fast. You got a jacket on. I just figured like you develop these antisocial behaviors, and they just like I just progress, and then I don't see you again.
Yeah.
So you're maybe what? Till we're both like maybe early 30s.
Yeah. I think I was teaching over at Whittier by the time I saw you again, or maybe just about to, but I already was teaching at like Chinese after school academies, maybe. Yeah.
It was at the DAW because I went. This was before I was literary director, and I went there to see. I went there. I don't know why I was there. I mean, I was there because I heard about a writing workshop, and I was like, I got to be everywhere. And then it was led by Branningham, and you weren't there. And then he was doing Euphrasius, and then so I wrote something real quick. And he said, "Hey, that's pretty good. Why don't you come to the open mic or something like that?" And then I went to open mic, and that's when I saw you there.
Yeah.
And then
that's right.
You had this, they introduced you. You had this impressive. There's like this really impressive bio, like, oh, Professor Scott Creeley, he's been published, blah, 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 nominated for a push cart, all this shit. They go up next. No, first they say all this shit, like, oh, this guy next, he's a professor, he's nominated for a push cart, whoa, Scott Noon Creeley. And I'm like, well, first of all, who the fuck is Scott Noon Creeley? Where this Noon shit come from? Secondly, that's Scott. Like, what the fuck? Yeah. That was wild.
I was aware that you were writing prior to seeing you again, because I had friends that did the Mike and Dim Lights, and were seeing you there, so I knew you were already kind of making your name there and around LA. But I mean, you started writing early. I'm honestly not surprised that like you made your way into this career and everything. But I definitely, I guess, went from like roughneck to I was always a reader, like yeah.
But yeah, it was just, you were by the time I got to hang out with you in your 30s, you're probably you were probably the person you always were.
Yes, yeah.
Of being somebody else.
Yeah. That's probably accurate.
Yeah.
Like, I've got some of those impulses, but like you can get them out by yelling communist stuff at kids.
It took me a while longer to get them out because I still had some pretty antisocial behaviors just about till maybe, I don't know, 6 months ago, maybe. Maybe.
So you're leading an activist lifestyle. You gotta have that roughness.
Yeah, I gotta have my edge,
Yeah.
So we got questions in the audience. I want to ask you more about your publications, Spout Press. Yeah. But let's take this question first. Hi guys, I have a creative writing question. I want to learn more about writing science fiction. Is there a certain set of rules sci-fi writers typically follow? I recently got started reading Ender's Game. Do you recommend anything that we should study?
Well, I mean, so science fiction is really just the same as any other fiction, right? But it's looking toward exploring the same things any other writing does, but by trying to introduce some element that's new to reality, so you can explore some. So use that as a device to explore some window into humanity, right? By placing people in this unique situation, like, oh, there's replicants, or there's faster than light travel, or we're encountering these other non-humans. You emphasize some aspect of humanity. So there are these three aspects to science fiction called the novum, a new thing that gets introduced by the text. There's often an exploration of human and non-human interaction in those things as a means to explore humanity, and then usually, not always, but usually sci-fi is concerned with the future, like where will we be, how are things going to progress, and like those are the three core things that like literary studies of science fiction make major criticism of it, aside from like the big schools like Marxism or deconstruction or something like that. If you want to read a book that kind of touches on the critical aspects of science fiction and looks at good like sample stories and kind of analyzes them, there's this book called the Wesleyan Anthology of science fiction that is sci-fi stories that range from like the late 1800s up until like 2012ish when it was published. They might have an updated one out. I don't know. And that one's a really good sort of like introduction to the genre, and also like looks at like the critical aspects of how it's written. So I like that one a lot. And then there's a science fiction. There's a Chinese science fiction anthology called Lost Planets or Phantom Planets. Damn, I'm blanking. But look up both of those, you'll find it. And that one does sort of the same thing, but with the Chinese sci-fi, which Chinese sci-fi is really amazing because it makes explorations of different aspects of the future than Western science fiction does, like or really just than non-Chinese science fiction does. Chinese science fiction is really, really group and society oriented, and has really, really interesting takes on things because of that. And especially with like the capitalist vein that's been introduced to the country in the past few decades, like that has worked its way in there. It's also in conflict with that constantly, sort of versus the ideals of communism, and it's pretty great stuff. So I recommend both of those books big time. I like Ender's Game, but the guy who wrote it is Orson Scott Card, who's sort of a right wing asshole when you really start looking into his politics. So it's interesting that he writes because he's writing sci-fi, and sci-fi is inherently hopeful. He has to write a lot of characters with left wing values that are like making like left wing sort of like approaches into the future despite his political views. So there's sort of an inherent hopefulness you have to address, but dude himself is a jackass. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, it's a completely different genre, but I'm kind of interested in this question, like how my play sci-fi. I saw what the fuck was that shit? Downtown Abbey, right? And like that shit to me was like it was like almost an exact refutation of Upstairs Downstairs, right? Like the show and the BBC used to put on in like the 70s, where you had like this, it was the same thing. It was like, here's the rich people and here's the people downstairs, right? But it was like very class conscious. It was very, I mean, there were a couple episodes of shit that were like totally just like the problems of rich people and like all poor them. But for the most part, it was like you really saw that these people lived at the expense of these people. Whereas like Downtown Abbey just like completely just naturalizes the idea that there should be a rich and a poor, right? So do you see similar trends in sci-fi where like sci-fi, you got like Isaac Asimov, you got like Ursula Le Guin, you got all these like big voices, even like Gene Roddenberry, right? You have these like kind of ideas where like there's just kind of like life could be better and it should be better. Do you see like any reversals of that? Like when people are like kind of like creating things like they're like.
Oh yeah, so that are like naturalizing like sort of the bad aspects of class and wealth and things.
Yeah, like this kind of it's dystopia, but that's good.
Yes, absolutely. There's and this is gonna seem like a weird take, but there's this game called Warhammer that's like little miniatures, and it's like it seems like a niche thing, but it's actually like hugely popular and kind of like widely played by like dudes who are really, really deep into nerd culture. And its main character is this sort of like right-wing fascistic empire that like back when this game started in the 70s, I would say it's been around for a long time. was a parody. It was meant to be making fun of this stuff, but gradually over time has been taken literally and kind of has made its way into like alt-right memes. And it's this massive industry with like a collection of hundreds of novels that go with it that like sell pretty well. And it's all a endorsement of sort of like this grinding multi-planetary trillions and trillions of lives like corporatocracy that consumes them, and it's all for the glory of the empire. And it's very much like sort of a continuation of like Robert Heinlein, who kind of in a lot of his novels like endorses all these like right wing ideas, and it's made its way into video games. Like there's a lot of fascistic leanings in like Gears of War or like let's see, what is there any other like real uber right wingy? I mean, all the Warhammer related video games, real right wingy. But yeah, I see that pop up more and more. But conversely, there's a lot of left leaning sci-fi too. Like I would say more left leaning sci-fi than right wing stuff. A lot of questioning of class roles, questioning of the capital system. You know, questioning where we derive value from. Like a lot of things undermining that stuff. Especially. Have you read the Three Body Problem? That big Chinese sci-fi trilogy. It's worth reading if you ever get the time. But you're giving interviews till you die. So, but you know, like if and when this is over, it's worth looking into. And that one starts in the Cultural Revolution under Mao and ranges all the way to basically the end of time. And it's got a real interesting, uplifting kind of dissolving of the universe, which sounds bad, but ends up sort of being a good thing. And it acts a real left-wing balance, and it's wildly popular, like globally. Yeah. And I think it's because it speaks to people feeling very constricted by the way we're living now, and bucking up against that.
So where else to go from the dissolution of the universe but to selling your book? Tell us, where can we find your book?
Probably, sadly, Amazon is probably the best place to get it. It looks like this. Yeah. See, there we go.
Yeah, digging a hole in the moon. To the moon.
Yeah, digging a hole in the moon. You can pick it up off Amazon. You can probably get it from Spout Hill's website. I'm not going to check right now. You can get it from Spout Hill's website, but or Amazon. Either one is a good way to pick it up. I get about the same cut. So pick it up on there. Appreciate it.
And where do we find more about you and your upcoming projects?
Oh, scottcreeley.com or my Instagram. I basically abandoned Facebook. I might start it up again. We're all quarantined. We don't get to go outside anymore. I might start using that again. I've basically been watching your interviews on it, catching a thing here or there, and that's all the interaction I've had with it recently. So my Instagram or scottcreeley.com. Yeah, pick up my stuff on there. Links to my other writing. You know.
Well, I thank you for your time, Scott, and I'm sure we'll be seeing each other again, either in person or like this.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. It was fun. Appreciate you. Good luck with the rest of your interviews, dude.
Yeah, talk soon.
Thanks.